Hey everybody, it's the Man Master here. I'm just doing a video today about the recent statements made by Anthony Fauci. Truth. I'm gonna talk about this because I just decided to do a video about this because, for one, I think he does not have the perspective of someone that has a cogent, intelligent grasp on what people think or believe about him and what's happened the last 2.5 years now. And I keep seeing statements by him saying, "Oh well, if we weren't so divided politically, it's like he doesn't really get it." Maybe he does on some level, or maybe he does and he's just lying. Now, he doesn't come across like a very trustworthy person a lot of the time, as I've said on this channel millions of times. This is like my first video about this in a long time, actually, about this stuff. I was going to do videos about, with versus from, how they're admitting it in the media now a lot of the time. Or they're saying this and that prior immunity, they say all sorts of stuff in the media that they used to be verboten subjects. And it really bothers me, the level of censorship and just bullshit that has happened because of this stuff. So what has happened in regards to people, if as far as his message getting across, or people, wanting to have all these mandates and stuff, people, it's not political divisiveness that's causing that. It's not Trump. It's not anti-Trump. It's the fact that we have a system that is crumbling, a political system, or that is already corrupt, and that people do not trust the people when they continue to never explain themselves in the right ways or communicate in a very clear, articulate way. Like, for example, I said this before. I said I think that they should have had almost like a town hall thing with regards to all the COVID press conferences they had in 2020. They should have had people calling in and asking questions and having conversations with people. But of course, they never wanted to do that. They just wanted to slam everything down our throats and then give all these billions of dollars to large corporations with the CARES Act. So the biggest upwards transfer of wealth in history. And Fauci never talks about that. He never talks about things like that. He never talks about the fact that he, the fact that the censorship, that's what really, I think censorship was a big part of this. Government censorship made people not trust the government. And it happened early on because a lot of those things, those emails leaked. The NIH emails leaked earlier, like last year. I think it was like around May or June. And if something's being suppressed or censored, it's kind of a sign that there are nefarious ideas at work. And from the beginning, they were censored. I remember when mentioning vitamin D on Wikipedia or various places was verboten as far as COVID goes. I remember when they were trying to, like, these big media companies and stuff. Oh, it was actually on, a list of basically they were default banning the discussion of it. I think Roger Seahalt was one of the only people that talked about it on YouTube. And during in 2020, he had like 2 or 3 videos that were taken down, not related to that, but related to, various things he was talking about. Like certain treatments that, were talked about, were overhyped in all honesty, but still, from the right. But yeah, I hate this smugness and this, you know, this opinion. It's just like a backwards rationalization of why things happen the way they did. And it has nothing to do with reality. That's not why people didn't trust the media or didn't trust the government as far as COVID goes. It had nothing to do with that. It was all because censorship, uh, the already corrupt systems that were in place, and just various other factors like that. And I just do not like this, what he's trying to say in these interviews. And obviously he changed his mind every fucking 5 seconds about certain things, or he at least didn't explain the previous change over at the time. So when a person does that in a relationship, let's say you're in a relationship and someone like pretends they don't know what you're talking about, and then because they said something else. I've known people in various situations that have done this in familial and in interpersonal relationships. It's called gaslighting. So that's why people felt gaslit, is because he would say something and then he would say very much the opposite months later, and then he would deny saying the previous thing, or kind of downplay what he said before in the media. So that's really why people didn't trust him or trust the science, as they call it. It's just become, it's kind of one of those things that I think what has happened in the last 60 years, basically 60 years, America has changed a lot for the worse in a lot of ways, because what happened is there are certain powers that be that got more powerful in the last 50, 60 years. It's the truth, the intelligence apparatus and all these things. So the American people have not trusted. They have been cynical about the government and corporations and so forth for many years now. I mean, nothing. Just imagine if they would have had like a movie about FDR, the whole what was it called, the business plot, back in like 1953, about FDR, the business. If you read about this business plot, they would have never had that. Everybody was just docile and following the media and following everything, like even beyond now. It's bad now. I mean, it's bad enough that people just follow what the media says and all that stuff, but you did not have the level of dissension that you have now. I mean, there were some beatniks back in the 50s that didn't, maybe they grew their hair a little longer, or smoked a little dope and went on the road or whatever, but it was nothing like it is now with people and the rebellion that's happened, the anti-establishment, that had the establishment being questioned so much. So I just want to, give a word on this. And I continue to see these interviews, and I'm just like, who does he think these interviews serve? Like, he has no grasp on reality. I think it reminds me of certain relatives that have no grasp on, they're in such denial about their, children and how they grew up, and they blame other people, they blame this or that, and they never take personal responsibility. And I don't know if this is something I'm starting to think, is that people do not have any grasp on. They sometimes, the conspiracy thought, conspiracy truther kind of thing, is good up to a certain point. I think a lot of times people just don't realize that they're part of things that are nefarious. Like, what they're doing is causing harm because they're in such a bubble. And I don't know if Fauci's just stupid or naive and ignorant, or if he knows very well that he's contributed to this thing, is by his very way of doing things within the government, over the last 2.5 years, has caused the distrust, has caused the suspicion that people have had, the conspiracy theories. Now, it was not very open. It was not very accountable. And when you have any kind of institutional resource not being open or accountable for what they're doing or what they're not doing, it creates mistrust. I mean, you look at the Rand Paul, questioning of him, and total denial and back, just, I mean, it wasn't gain of function. I mean, it's like so many, it's almost like Clinton and sex, like when he was questioned about I did not have sexual relations with that woman. I just had a blowjob or whatever, there's things like that. It's just like, it's the same kind of thing, this rhetorical gameplay, semantic gameplay that he played with Rand Paul about gain of function. And it doesn't even mean that there was anything nefarious going on with the lab and stuff. I'm not saying that. And of course, I do believe that there was something, but I'm just saying, like, even you could still deny it, even if you admit that there was gain of function. But he did not do that. He created the mistrust. He created the suspicion by the very nature of his personality quirks or whatever. He created this. I mean, there are a lot of people, there were a lot of people that were suspicious about everything from the beginning, because I'm going to do a video about this actually. People had been talking about this stuff for, 20, 30 years. A lot of what happened during the whole crisis. People were predicting a lot of stuff, and I'll do a video. That will be my next video, actually. So yeah, I don't think the guy really helped in creating a open and accountable environment with regards to things. And obviously, the Trump administration, which was probably pretty hard to work in, honestly, as a mercurial kind of divisive figure like Trump, that certainly doesn't help. But he could have pushed for accountability and openness, and he did not. Fauci, he did not. He just it was rhetoric, it was just rhetoric after rhetoric of all this shit, and it's just like, just admit. And there was a lot of smugness and a lot of arrogance in his tone and the way he was, and he did not realize this at the time. I don't know. I'm giving, in this video, I'm almost giving him the benefit of the doubt. I'm not going down the truther rabbit hole in this video. Of course, I have my own opinions about him and what he may be or may not be involved in. I'm a little agnostic about it, but I'm just saying, if you go by the mainstream narrative, even taking that, if let's say just like play devil's advocate, go by that mainstream narrative, he created the mistrust by his very way of being, how he was, and what he said and how he acted, because nobody trusted this guy. He was changing his mind about stuff every 5 seconds, making it up as he went along, and just like, it's kind of like an incompetent official. Like, let's say they make something up as they go along, like they don't know how to do something. Or just like anybody that does a job, like they're at a job, like, oh yeah, they're putting files away and they're all disorganized. It's like, oh, this is because I didn't know about this, and then the person contradicts himself the next day. So I didn't know about this. Oh yeah, I had to do this, or I had to do that. It's like, just totally changing the narrative of why you're doing such a shitty job, because you're an incompetent pile of shit, basically. And I really do think he is, because I don't think you would have had, if you had the openness and accountability, if you would have had that, people would have followed the mandates more, possibly. I mean, people would have followed what you were saying if you were open and accountable more than you were. But just, the way that they were, secretive and just very, like, contradictory towards everything, that, and thinking about it, there's a lack of empathy too with him. And it's like, obviously, if you work in the medical field, your focus is on that. So you don't think about other things like, well, lockdowns could cause this and all this stuff. But, I mean, if they would have had psychologists, economists, all these people on the COVID task force, let's say we had, instead of just like Mike Pence and Fauci and Birx, or who, I don't know who was involved with this, but if you had people from a variety of fields, have like 30 people in it, and just determine what the best course of action is. Of course, I don't, obviously I have my own opinions about things. I'm playing this video from that perspective that, it was all it was hyped up to be. I'm playing from that perspective in this video. Even within that perspective is that suspension suspicion of him, and just this distrust. So that's about all.